Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday on this March 28th, 2025. I have all your news for your rush hour ride home and then some. This is going to be an action-packed episode. Today's podcast, we're going to discuss this earthquake that ravaged Myanmar and Thailand. Also, the roll tide deportations. That's right. Alabama is not safe from some of the senseless deportations. And Ryan Reynolds is teaming up with a company with close ties to Disney. So his reward for this fiasco, this lawsuit between him, Blake Lively, and Justin Baldoni, I guess, is better business. And this is what I said. I said, I don't think this is going to hurt him. Sadly, I mean, you want justice to be served, but I'll share that for you. Also, speaking of TV shows, I actually recommend Logan and Jake Paul have a new reality show. I watched it. I'll tell you I loved it, and I'll explain why. And also an update on the protest happening in Massachusetts for the Tufts the student who was wrongfully deported. And then we've got a conversation with our friend Katrina discussing the student loan crisis. This may not affect you specifically just yet, but these federal loan issues are exploding people's repayments. In some cases, people are paying 5 or 10 times as much as they were paying just a couple months ago. What does this mean for you? Will this affect our mortgage? So many different questions out there. So I got all these stories and more. It's all happening right now on The Rush. Well, really sad and scary news to report coming from Myanmar and Thailand. A 7.7 magnitude massive earthquake has left the countries just absolutely reeling right now, at least 20 dead. And as you'll see right here with this video I'm sharing, this is a moment a high-rise building collapses. There's been, so many devastating videos and photos to come from this disaster. Temples that have been destroyed, and, I'm sure the death count will rise, but really just, hey, Mother Nature right there, 7.6, that is no joke. These videos capture the quake shaking buildings and roadways, sending a crane crashing down the side of a building in Bangkok, hundreds of miles away from the epicenter. That high-rise under construction collapses to the ground, sending workers scrambling for their lives as a violent plume of debris erupts and spreads over the work site. So, our thoughts and prayers go out to our good friends over there in Myanmar and Thailand. I actually have relatives that have married into my extended family from Myanmar, formerly Burma, and real devastating news to see there. Well, on the home front, ICE has detained a University of Alabama doctoral student as government's college crackdown continues. There has been no evidence to any crimes committed by this student. If more information comes out, we will share that. The Crimson White, the university's newspaper, reported the man is Iranian national Alireza Daroudi, a doctoral candidate studying mechanical engineering, arrested at home at 5 a.m. on Tuesday, and we're just finding this out. So that's what's crazy, in some of these cases, you don't find out right away who's been detained and where they even are and things like that. They are entitled to due process, to a lawyer. We just heard about the Canadian former actress who was detained for 48 hours in a cold cell after thinking she had a visa. She found out her visa was denied. None of her lawyers knew about this. And then rather than letting her leave the country to get a visa and come back, they actually detained her. So we're finding these stories left and right. They are horrifying to see. The Today Show, actually, I had a video pulled up to report on this, and the video disappeared. It's no longer available. I don't know what crazy things are going on here, but they literally deleted the video, and it was them explaining that there were protests happening on the college campus of Tufts after that college student, the PhD student, was just kidnapped by plainclothes police officers. Now, I've got a Facebook page, by the way, where I've been discussing things like this, and I've had some people, very minority, saying, Dave, you're on the wrong side of this. Half the country voted for this. This is what we wanted. I disagree. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, only has a 29% approval rating right now. But what we're finding out is a lot of the issues that are coming from the DOGE cuts and rolling back protections, a lot of those issues are actually leading towards a lot of people getting royally effed. One of which we'll be talking to our pal Katrina. She is a pathologist. She, of course, racked up medical debt, as you do, to get a degree and become a doctor. And we're going to share how her student loans went from $800 a month to $4,000 and more. So really wild times. And not only that, President Donald Trump is ending collective bargaining with federal labor unions and agencies with national security missions across the federal government. Collective bargaining is something I really pride myself on being a part of in the past as a member of Screen Actors Guild. This idea that we can all come together and collectively try to just not be exploited, really, and get a livable wage. That's something that we should all be in agreement that is a good thing. So the rollback of unions is just showing of what might come. All right. Well, again, it's tough. These are tough things to talk about. But for those that have said, "Oh, Dave, keep it light." Look, it's tell that to the people that have to deal with all these issues. Tell that to the 500,000 migrants who are having their legal status rolled back, or the people whose sons are literally in detention facilities, unable to get legal representation to give them a fair trial. In our country, you don't have to just be a legal citizen to receive First Amendment rights and due process. That is something we give to everybody. And it seems like the only defense people have is, well, but they don't do it in other countries, as if that's like the sort of beacon of justice we want to live up to, right? Well, speaking of justice, Ryan Reynolds in the news. Again, we've covered this story for several months and we'll continue to cover it. He and his Maximum Effort company, they inked their first look deal with 20th Television. Now, this is a lot of entertainment jargon, but what does it really mean? Ryan Reynolds is solidifying his Disney ties with a first look deal at 20th Television for his Maximum Effort productions. Under the pact, Reynolds and his team will develop and executive produce comedy, drama, limited, and unscripted series for all linear networks and streamers with an emphasis on platforms across Disney Entertainment Television. I hope they are including in the budget room for intimacy coordinators. Of course, I say that in jest because his wife, Blake Lively, is embroiled in multi-$100-million lawsuits, including Ryan Reynolds. He's in the lawsuit as well. Although he has thrown out a motion to dismiss. We are waiting to hear back from the judge as I record this on Friday afternoon. I don't know if we're going to get it today, but according to the timeline, I wouldn't be surprised if it arrives this afternoon. We'll have to see what the judge actually says. So 27 years ago, you want to feel old? 27 years ago, that's crazy. 27 years ago, the 20th TV-produced sitcom, Two Guys and a Girl, originally Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place, premiered on ABC, marking Ryan Reynolds' first lead role. So he's been on ABC, he's worked with Disney, and now he's going to continue to be a mainstay in the world of entertainment. And a lot of people are going to, we're going to find out how many of these actors that worked on It Ends With Us will end up getting rewarded with maybe a couple deals in some of these projects. Of course, those actors have stayed silent as they initially were defending Blake Lively, but since then, haven't heard too much from them. So again, it's extremely interesting. I said this before, I'm not surprised that Ryan Reynolds is still working. He is a billionaire. He's got money in liquor and cell phone plan, Mint Mobile, and Blake Lively's. They're say what you want about them. They're entrepreneurial, that's for sure. And having all of these deals go through before this trial takes place is interesting. I'm surprised to an extent that anyone wants to work with this company while they wait to see how this all plays out. But as we know, corporations are psychopathic. They don't feel pain. They don't feel guilt. They don't feel empathy or love. They feel, does this make me money or not? And Ryan Reynolds makes money. He's a star. That doesn't mean you have to support him, but that's where that's at. So very interesting news from the entertainment world right there. And as we have updates this weekend, we will share them with regard to Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni. Right now, it's kind of in a lull as we wait for the next round of court documents to come out. Tomorrow, I will be sharing an exclusive interview with Vanderpump Rob, a podcast about Vanderpump Rules, Bravo, other shows that we discuss discuss, and I think it'll be interesting. I think you'll want to hear what he has to say about the behind the scenes of content creating. So stick around for that tomorrow. All right, before we get to our featured interview of the day, let's go to this conversation. Attention is the currency. Being universally liked is not realistic. So say the Paul brothers. Logan Paul on the left, Jake Paul on the right. Speaking of billionaires, I think because of his hit beverage company Prime, Logan Paul is definitely on his way to becoming one, if he's not already one. Well, now they have a reality show out on HBO. I'll comment on it after I play this clip.
Polarizing, man. It's either I'm rocking with those guys, I see the hustle, I respect it, or you could bleep it. Screw them. There's not really any in between.
Plus, you want someone to have an opinion on you. If they don't, then that's when you're losing.
Do you care to be liked?
I really don't care. Like, I'm just so detached from it.
Attention is the currency. Being universally liked is not realistic. It's just not. I think we both gave up the idea of seeking validation and approval from millions of strangers a long time ago.
Do you have any regrets?
No regrets, brother.
It's tattooed on him. So Jake confirmed no regrets. Logan, do you have any regrets?
I do. And it's such a hard question because we're in such a good spot now. And you think if some things changed in the past, what would the present look like?
Whatever's gotten in our way, it hasn't stopped us from wanting to accomplish more and chase our dreams and chase our goals and do it together.
Listen, okay, so here are my thoughts. I watched the pilot 2 nights ago, and I couldn't stop watching. I watched it till like 4 a.m. I was in bed. I was like, I'll put this thing on because I know my wife's not going to want to watch it. And I really enjoyed it. Look, they're kind of douchebags. They've made mistakes. They've gone too far with their YouTube coverage of certain things in the past. They've been embroiled in controversies. They've had issues. And they've come out on top. And to see brothers come from nothing, literally just a middle-class upbringing in, I believe, Ohio, to being worth hundreds, if not hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion. I find it inspiring, to be quite honest, whether you like them or not. On the left, you have Logan Paul getting involved in WWE and becoming like a real acrobatic world wrestler, really. And then Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson, who again is 58 years old. He fought an out of shape, older professional boxer. But they're finding ways to live their dreams. And I don't know. I think that what I like about Paul American, the actual show, is you see the parents. You see Nina Agdal, who's Logan Paul's fiance. She, of course, is a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. Jake Paul's dating and now has since proposed to and is engaged to a professional speed skater. It's interesting. They call themselves the testosterone Kardashians. I got to tell you, it's interesting to say the least. It's on HBO. Again, they're not paying me to say that. I tell you what's good out there. And I'd love to know your thoughts. All right, well, we have a great interview that I'm going to preface right now by saying this was, it was going to be a little bit shorter, like a 10-minute chat, but it's kind of complicated to get into. I speak to my friend, Katrina. She's a pathologist, which means she diagnoses cancer, and she's a doctor, and she's now getting absolutely hosed on her student loans because of new programs or programs that were cut that were protecting how much people have to pay back. And again, it's an incredible amount. So many people are facing this issue right now, this gutting of some of these protection agencies that kept the student loans at bay. So it's absolutely senseless what's happening. The conversation's interesting. I really hope you stick around for it. My chat with Katrina. All right, ladies and gentlemen, special Friday guest on the podcast. We met officially last week at the Game of Roses watch party. It's pathologist, our LA friend, mother of Huckleberry, the tortoise, I believe it is. It's Katrina Krogh. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Yeah, Huckleberry, he gets offended when people call him a turtle.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's a land tortoise, right?
Yeah, and I guess the difference is that tortoises are primarily on land and turtles can go in the water. I don't know. But yeah, he's a tortoise. Oh, also tortoises can go in their shell completely. And
good to know.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like an introvert. Is he... Does he have moments? Does he have, how dogs have like the zoomy moments? Does he have those moments where where you can tell he's like playing?
100%. He honestly gets crazy sometimes, especially when it's really sunny out. He's solar powered apparently, and he'll try to get in my house. So, and sometimes I let him because it's kind of cute. But if I open the sliding glass door, and there's even just a little left open, he'll put in his little paw or his flipper, I don't his foot, and he'll try to come in.
What a cute! I know. So your tortoise Huckleberry had to be rescued by the Pasadena Humane Society because you had to evacuate for the fires. House looks okay from my perspective, but can you give us a fire update and how the community is doing?
Yeah, I don't know if you were able to like see any of the wreckage when you were here, but I was driving through it the other day, kind of seeing what it was looking like in Altadena, and it looks like it still looks pretty bad. It still looks pretty much the same, except there's less. They've clearly done a little bit of cleanup of like the debris, like the ash, and things like that, and the community is definitely still hit really hard. And still feeling it, and it's a wild situation. But yeah, no, Huckleberry. The scariest thing was really when it was all unfolding, and we didn't know how far it was going to go. And
did you try to evacuate with him? Like, what's the procedure? Walk me through that. Or did you just assume there's no way the fire will make it to us?
No, well, my boyfriend kind of was more in that realm, and he said, "Don't worry about it. I don't think the fire is going to make it to us." And I said, "I don't know." And it actually got very, very close. But I live near the Jet Propulsion Lab. And so I'm about 2 blocks from the Jet Propulsion Lab, which for anyone who doesn't know, it's a NASA
it's like a campus. Yeah, it's like a big campus in Pasadena.
And they do rocket launches from there. And so presumably there's a lot of rocket fuel, things like that there. And so kind of the word around here, I don't know if it's been confirmed by the government or anything, is that they absolutely needed to prevent the fires from getting too close to the JPL. And so I happen to just be close enough to the JPL potentially where I don't know if my community or my neighborhood was spared because of that, or if it was just the ash didn't spread here.
So it could have been possibly there was like there was a priority to like protect these like sort of systems.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are under the impression that they absolutely were trying to prevent the JPL from getting reached by the fires. But yeah, so basically what happened was, but we still got evacuated, of course, just in case, like everyone around here.
And how much does Huckleberry weigh? We're talking about a big land tortoise here.
He's 150 pounds. So
oh my gosh.
The problem is when the fires were happening and you could smell it, right? Everyone could smell it. And so could he. And so he actually Huckleberry went into emergency mode and didn't want to move. He didn't move at all. He was and he like lives in this house that's really hard to get him out of. So yeah, like I wrote you the story before, but it was really scary because we left with my dogs and we had to leave Huckleberry and then just hope that Pasadena Humane Society could get him. And they did get him, and we don't know how.
Yeah, we picked it up and saw your footage, kind of getting him back from the Humane Society.
Yeah.
But Huckleberry seems to be like he was quite the mascot over there. Obviously they were taking in as many animals as they could. Real heroes, what they were doing there to help, stay right there at the battle line of this fire and help just get as many. So what do? You just give them, you call them up, give them your address, and then you just cross your fingers. It sounds like so. I would be panicked.
Yeah, we didn't even know if we were talking to the right person. We didn't even know. We were like, here's the address, and there's a giant tortoise in the backyard in a house, and they pretty much said that they would try, but that they're really like busy trying to evacuate a lot of different things. And then we got the call later that they did it. And
that must have been such a nice moment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then when we went to go pick them up, it was just so cool. They had, yeah, they really were heroes. They set up these makeshift like areas for the different animals, and there were lots of huckleberries in the exotic room, and he had sort of the biggest enclosure in the area. But in that room were every type of animal. I mean, I think there were, I don't know, there were some things I didn't even know what they were. Like they're exotic.
Yeah, they became like the Noah's Ark. They just had a little bit of everything here. So look, we're just really happy to hear that you guys made it back and that the house is okay and all of that. But I did want to talk to you. When we met in person last week, you were sharing some of an interesting thing that's going on that I wasn't too familiar with, which is a student loan issue. So I've done some research. There's a thing called income-driven repayment plans, which means no matter how big your student loans are, you only have to pay back a portion of your income. And then after a certain amount of years, 20 to 25 years, it would go away. So is this it's called IDR, income-driven repayment. Is this going away? Like, what's the issue? And tell me, because you're a pathologist, you went to school for a long time. You're a doctor, Dr. Katrina here, right? Can I call you a doctor? How does that work?
Yeah. I'm a physician. Pathologists go to med school, residency, fellowship, like everyone else. We just you don't hear of us as much because we don't see patients directly, but we make diagnoses with our microscopes. I actually have a microscope chilling right here.
Oh, there it is. Look at that. You're under the microscope. You got the whole kit. You got tortoises and microscopes. Katrina is a smart lady right here. So I say this all to say you're qualified to talk about the journey of getting to where you are. Years of student loan debt and investing in a lifetime of helping out, in the medical world. So tell me the issues.
Yeah. So, and I think this is something that's going to resonate with a lot of people who follow you and listen to you, but it's still good to know. So, and I'll try to make this as apolitical as possible and just state like the facts, but it might seep in. But this is affecting people on all sides of these issues. So, we know that when the new administration took over, they started kind of taking a chainsaw to different things in the government and are just doing all sorts of things that people may or may not agree with. And they're doing them abruptly and kind of without any like transition plans and things like that.
And by the way, just to interrupt, I've argued with people. They go, look, half the country wants this. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is polling at 29% approval, which means only 1 out of 4 people still think this is good. Most people realize actually it's leading to more debt. It's leading to more issues than whatever penny pinching's going on because it's no longer bringing in the same tax revenue and they're not cutting the Department of Defense. So it's purely the theater arts of Elon Musk holding a giant chainsaw saying, look what we're doing. Isn't this great? I say that you don't have to be political, but I'll say that it is not the majority of the country is not approving of the direction it's going. Okay. So sorry, continue.
Yes, no, absolutely. So I think there are a few issues that even people who might have voted for this, I think there are many things now coming to light that people are scared to lose. I have, and I'll touch back to this, but my mom and stepdad are very MAGA and very, pro-Trump, and I love them. And, we've figured out now for a while how to coexist because I'm definitely, not just coexist. We actually do really well together. I'm actually lucky. It's not quite as bad as I think, like Chad's parents. It's not quite as extreme, but it can be pretty extreme. And
yeah, you feel like you're not speaking the same language sometimes with regards to how these policies are affecting people. Like a lot, and look, they say that as you age, you actually lose a little empathy. Like you start to close off understanding things that don't directly affect you.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because actually growing up, my mom was actually a very staunch Hillary supporter, and she was very like Democratic, but eventually she kind of shifted, but that's okay. And okay, so so I'll touch a little bit more on my mom later because this sort of ties into the student loan story for me. But just in a nutshell, with the student loans, 12 million people are on federal student loans. So I'm not really talking about the private loans people might get right now. About 12 million people have taken out federal student loans for their education. And that includes college, graduate school, medical school. And I'm actually a really transparent person, so I'll even talk about my situation. But when I went to medical school, I had to entirely fund it with loans. My family wasn't able to help me with that, but that was something I took on and something my mom was definitely anxious about for me, even back then, of how much I would take on for loans. So I took on about $370K of loans. So I have a lot of loans. And to some of your audience, that's going to sound wild. And to others, they're going to say, yeah, no, I have 500K or something.
That would sound like a lot if you were an undergrad, but that sounds like a very reasonable. I've got a brother-in-law who's a doctor, and those loans are just starting to kick in as he just finished his residency. And yeah, it's
Exactly.
massive. It's massive. Even under the best circumstance, tell me, what does this mean monthly for you?
Yeah. And I do want to stress that for the vast majority of people on loans, it's not nearly that much. I think it's, but to them, it's a lot. Right. And, so basically one of the only ways that people on student loans feel any sense of security, because you might wonder, why would anyone do that? That sounds crazy. The thing is that for decades now, the federal government has offered these income-driven, or basically these income-based repayment plans that offer some mercy. So what happens with them? There are 4 different types, maybe 5. But what happens with them is that you will pay a percent of your income every month, like 10% or 15% for 20 to 25 years, and then after that, the rest of your debt is forgiven. By
the way, that would be nice money to spend on retirement, investments, those types of things previous generations were able to do with their additional income, because you're working in a high cost of living area, you're living in your means, but it's like who really has an extra 10% to throw towards So I can understand how even in a best case scenario, it's tough to come up with that kind of money.
Exactly. And sorry, Max, what you doing? I think, okay, so sorry, side note, Max sometimes hears the tortoise walking around and wants to bark at him.
Love it. No, I love the sounds of dogs barking.
So there's also this other plan called public service loan forgiveness that actually is really generous. And if you go into a nonprofit job, you can work for 10 years and then the rest of your debt is forgiven. But just suffice it to say, there are a few plans that have made going to get these loans somewhat reasonable, and otherwise, the interest accrues at a pretty intense rate. I think the interest for my federal loans is 6.5%, and so basically, this is the lifeline for a lot of people to get the education they want, and for me to have become a doctor and do all of that. And so I'm a few years into my repayment, and I think my monthly payment was $819 a month or something like that. And which is a lot, but what happened was a few weeks ago, I was with some friends for a weekend playing Dungeons and Dragons. It was a D&D weekend, and we were trying to immerse ourselves in the game. Wow, I'm really sounding like a nerd. And I got this email that really took me out of the game. I actually had to check out for a lot of the weekend because I was panicking. And I got this email from my loan servicer from the federal government saying that my monthly payment was going to jump from $819 to $4,200 a month.
Ridiculous.
And, even on a doctor's salary, I genuinely can't afford to do that unless I were to move out of where I live and like different things like that. And I was starting to think on those terms, like, wow, what am I going to have to do to like make this payment? Because payments
for 20 years, for the majority of your wealth building life.
Yeah, it was just very scary. It was very scary. And you can imagine though, my scenario translate it to anybody. They could have had $0 payments, which is a thing if you're below a certain income, because you qualify for $0 payments. And I've seen some cases where people went from $0 to being requested to pay $1,000 a month.
Yeah,
so what happened was,
oh, sorry. Yeah, keep going.
No, go ahead. I'm just going to move because my dogs are being weird.
I didn't pay off my student loans till a year ago. I'm almost 40. And because, I didn't have money, and my student loans, I had only had to pay $140 a month, and I still had a hard time paying it off. So what was a $15,000 loan, I ended up paying about 50,000 total because of, stretching out the loan. And you just realize, like, how can we live in a world where that extra $35,000 that I essentially lit on fire could have gone to starting a business? Literally, it would have been better spent going to Applebee's and just putting it back into the economy. So this is money you're lighting on fire. And this is the repayment. This is the thanks that you get for going into an industry where you really need it. I mean, I think anyone who goes into healthcare should have their student loans forgiven after a couple of years. Like, just, like we need to incentivize people. We need better, smarter degrees, and like, this is high skill and all of that.
Yeah. And, there are a lot of people who I think who feel that for physicians or possibly high earners, keep in mind, physicians don't make much money right away. We make nothing in med school. We make a livable wage in residency. And then we make the amount we make, which, is usually $200K or above, but annually,
and if you're making $200,000, you're making $10,000 a month after taxes. You got a mortgage. $4,200 evaporates any amount of income that could go towards just having a normal lifestyle.
Yeah, and whatever life people have gotten used to with their certain payments, they figure out, like, okay, I can spend this much on food and this much on food, and then all of a sudden, if you have your payment, you're notified your payment is going to increase by 5 times or 10 times. It's very scary. So a couple weeks ago, this happened. I got this email, and I immediately started looking online for what was happening. And it turns out what was happening was that for some reason, one of the repayment plans is called SAVE. One of the repayment plans is in dispute by this administration, and in general, the Republicans. Actually, I think the dispute started in the previous administration, but I don't think this is a opinion. This is fact. The Republicans wanted to oppose it because they thought it was too generous of a plan. So it has been in contention and kind of been in the courts. But what happened was that when Trump took office, he and Doge took over, put a freeze on all of the income-based repayment plans. They took the applications down from the website, and they took you have to recertify your income every year for these plans. So, when you're in med school making $0, you have $0 payments a month. When you're in residency making $50K, you have something. And then now I pay $819 a month or whatever. But that was all getting frozen. So people's accounts were defaulting to this much higher payment, which is based on the 10-year standard repayment plan, but it wouldn't be for 10 years. It'd be for the rest of your 20 years or whatever. And people were panicking. And this was happening to hundreds of thousands of people around the country because there are 12 million student loan borrowers. And so about 1 million a month are affected if their recertification month is up. It's their turn to recertify.
So this is slowly just becoming a headache for people every month.
Yes. And so my recertification date was January 24th. And I actually did submit my recertification before then. But because of the freeze and the pause or whatever they were doing with these applications, I think everyone starting in December 2024 was not getting processed, either new applications or recertification through now. It's still not getting processed. And what had happened was that the only way out of this massively higher payment for me after looking online was to try to talk to my loan servicer and get put on a forbearance. And I did. I was on the phone essentially on hold for 12 hours, 4 hours one day, and then the call got dropped, and then 8 hours the next day on hold. And they wouldn't call. It wasn't the sort of hold where you call and then they call you back. I literally just had to have my phone plugged in and on speakerphone listening to the stupid music for 8 hours. And then I talked to someone, and then they said they thought they could get me on the forbearance, which was only supposed to be 60 days. So then you wonder, is the government going to have its shit together 60 days from now? I don't know. And now, luckily, I think there's been enough outcry and outrage and panic from everybody that they're delaying recertification for people. Supposedly it hasn't like gone through, but they're delaying that. And I think the upsetting thing about this is how much this is making people I don't know, just want to give up. I just want to give up.
So we looked at a Reddit thread, which was someone saying basically like, hey, I want to kill myself. I do not see light at the end of the tunnel. I did all the right things. What the response we get from previous generations that didn't have to go through what's happening now is, hey, you signed up for this. You got to repay your bills. This is, and now, when Biden tried to pass this plan to, wipe out a lot of these student loan debts, that was the response. Like, no, like you have to, like this is a fair thing to do. And I would just argue that people don't realize and can't even contextualize how like this indentured servitude happens, where you start to owe so much money that, like we said, the big bulk of your life is spent, just trying to get by. And people, people really don't see a solution. So tell me about, you explained this to your mom, and was this the sort of nail in the coffin where she finally understood some of the harm that was happening?
I think it's the first time since Trump was campaigning over 8 years ago that she's even sort of acknowledged anything kind of horrifying about this situation. One thing I do want to say is that for the federal loans, we are in a very airtight contract with the government. So it's fucked up. We have something called a master promissory note, which is an airtight contract, and they can't just change it. It's illegal for the government to just not participate in their end of it. And so the upsetting thing has been that they've just decided to do whatever they want. And that's really scared a lot of people. And so I told my mom the story after I got the forbearance, and I told her about it, and I was honestly almost crying because it was just like really stressful, and I was relieved to finally get through to someone. And my mom was very upset and said that the administration is terrorizing people. And I could not believe it. Wow. That she said that. And I felt seen and heard by her in a way I hadn't in a while. And I think part of it might be because she remembers she was with me when I signed, when I was like 20 and I was signing these loan documents. She remembers all of it. And so I think it really actually has, for this one issue, I think she's really been upset about it with me. I don't know if it's enough to get her to see the destruction in general that's happening, but I considered it a little bit of a win, at least for her and my relationship. So,
it's all kind of the same, right? These economic stresses, like this idea that it is like terrorizing, whether it's medical debt, whether it's debt because of student loan repayments. I mean, I'm doing the math in my head. If you have to make that $4,000 payment for 20 years, that's over $1 million. That $1 million invested over that time period is your retirement. And it's like the cause and effect of some of these things where they'd rather break things and then have to fix the things that were too broken. And we're just seeing cases where folks like you doing all the right things are affected. So I appreciate you sharing your story, and just come back and let us know how it all goes. And like, what are you doing other than just trying to get on the phone? Like, what is there? Is there any other thing people can do?
I heard that there was an attorney in possibly Arizona. I'm trying to remember. There was an attorney. So this is more than just doctors, right? This is really anything you can think of, any reason why anyone would need federal loans and professions that come from that. But there was an attorney who has federal loans who I think actually is suing the government. There are like individual lawsuits coming up. And for the first time ever, I actually reached out. I called my congressman and my attorney generals, and otherwise I don't know. I'm just sort of
well, there's a lot of stories like yours, and I think people are realizing that when everyone's voices come together and talk about these things, it does make a difference. And sadly, I mean, you've got a cabinet full of billionaires. They've been on the other side of this, where they're able to make money with their money and don't understand how fragile it can be to try to do something so basic as get a higher education in what is supposed to be the richest country in the world. It's a tragedy. I appreciate you sharing your story and also giving us updates on Huckleberry. I think it's good to talk about like Huckleberry before you share your story, because if you post this on Twitter, you're just going to have people saying, oh, you did, consequences of your actions, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, you're a human. You've done everything right, and you deserve to like thrive as you continue to work in a profession that saves lives. I mean, you're a pathologist. You help people diagnose cancers. You're saving people's lives. You're the heroes. Just like the Humane Society was the hero for Huckleberry, you're a hero for people. And that this is an utter disgrace what's happening to folks like you.
Thank you. Well, and I think the bottom line is that when you're in a contract, if you're in a loan contract with someone, and then all of a sudden the terms they say, oh, instead of you paying me back at this rate, we're actually gonna randomly, because of our own like negligence of how we're doing this, you're all of a sudden gonna owe so much more. I mean, that's just not okay. You can't fuck with people's money like that.
Well, Katrina, you got us here to do whatever we can do, but just keep us posted. And I appreciate you taking the time to like give us an update on what you're seeing on the streets. Tell your mom I said hi. And it's good to hear that at least you guys are having conversations about this.
Yeah, we are. Thank you so much, Dave.
All right, that's it for me. We had a fantastic week of content. I really appreciate all those kind folks that have reached out literally from across the globe. Thank you for being a part of our community. So many people said, I came for this Justin Baldoni stuff, but we've stuck around. I appreciate that. If you haven't already, join our Facebook page, Dave Neal's Community. It's a free community. You can be a part of all of the updates. We'll talk on Facebook or on Patreon. You can be a part of the free Patreon, or you can pay if you want to throw some bread in the tip jar. That's patreon.com/Dave Neal. If you're new here, every Friday afternoon, we have a little tradition we do. We like to end the episode by telling our bosses to go fuck themselves. But on behalf of student loan debt, I want to end it, telling student loan debt to go fuck itself. All right, that's it from me. Have a good one. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and then some. I'm Dave Neal, and this was The Rush.